Welcome everyone to my formerly exclusive FireRed series. I've made the decision to make these videos public for everyone because it just didn't feel right for me anymore to keep an entire game gated off with a paywall. That said, I really do appreciate all the people who do contribute financially, so there is still going to be exclusive content. However, it is not going to be exclusively one game, and it is going to be more supplemental content like analysis videos of entire playthroughs that have been explained in other fully produced videos on the channel. I'm also going to release some older unreleased footage, which is not very good, but I'll do commentary on it so we can all see how much I've grown. If you're interested in that, check out YouTube memberships with the join button below, or check out my Patreon at the link in the description. As we head into this video, just keep in mind that this was originally released as an exclusive video. I've gone back and done minor re-edits, but I have not majorly restructured the video. Throughout November, I'm going to be releasing every other video that I have produced in this series to date. So we're going to start with the starters, we're going to make our way through the 2 Route 1 Pokemon, and then finally to close the year out, I'm going to be doing a run with a fighting type that many people have wanted to see on my channel for a long time. So sit back, relax, grab some snacks, something like that, and enjoy some FireRed. Welcome everyone. I just really want to say thank you so much for supporting me. Because of that, you're going to get some exclusive videos, and so this is the first one in a series of 12. Before we get started, I really want to explain my thought process around this series, and really it just comes down to the fact that I want to learn these games in an environment that just isn't quite as public as uploading on the main channel. I also don't want to take away from myself the first playthroughs with most of these Pokemon, and I know that a lot of you like it when I evolve in the middle of playthroughs, so for this series I'm going to be starting with a first stage Pokemon, then evolving throughout the playthrough until the Pokemon reaches its final form. This is going to level off the difficulty curve just a little bit for me so that I'm not struggling too much in a game that I don't know particularly well. What this does mean is this 12-part series is going to feature its own tier list, which will be only relevant for these videos. And then when I start doing more FireRed videos on the main channel, I will have a completely different tier list which doesn't have any evolution in it. Now, another benefit of doing a series like this is I can spend a little bit more time talking about the things that I normally don't talk about on the channel. After all, it tends to be the case that on YouTube, people are there to watch Pokemon videos, and I shouldn't ramble for too long about things like overlay development, my creative process, or perhaps some insight that I've had into the learning process that I derived from learning a new game. So this series is going to give me a chance to talk about all of those things, which I hope will be very interesting for you. So now let's quickly go over my starter Pokemon. When I pick up Bulbasaur here, you'll notice that my base stats and the level that my Pokemon are superimposed in the bottom left. So that's because this overlay is in active development during these videos. There are going to be some mistakes, so if you see any, please let me know because I'm probably unaware of them at the current time. Also, if you examine Bulbasaur's current base stats, you will notice that something is very off. In this case, it is supposed to have 65 special attack and special defense with 45 speed. So I was trying to redesign the overlay to move speed to the bottom right, but I forgot to update this for when the base stats are showing. Anyways, another small oversight. At least a lot of the other areas of the overlay are looking better than they looked in the Torkoal video, which will be coming out later in the week. So to defeat the rival with these, Bulbasaur levels up to level 6, and by the way, it has a medium slow growth rate. All starter Pokemon have this growth rate, and it's probably the best growth rate to do a solo challenge with. Well, I guess fast is better, but very few Pokemon have the fast growth rate. Now, a new feature that I've added to the Generation 3 overlay is the experience bar. This is going to come to all generations eventually. I've added it to Generation 2, of course, which you would have saw in the coughing video, and now it's made its way to Generation 3. By the way, if you didn't know, in these games, Game Freak added 2 new growth rates, which are the erratic and fluctuating growth rates. I'm going to get a chance to talk about them in some Emerald playthroughs in the future, but for now I'll just leave them a mystery as they take a long time to explain and they're quite weird. Anyways, the development of this experience bar in Generation 3 was largely slow because I had to implement these 2 new growth rates. Alright, so in the forest with Bulbasaur, I start noticing that it's suffering a little bit from the grass poison effect, which is something that I noticed when playing Oddish in Pokemon Yellow. In the early game, both grass and poison type moves are not particularly good offensively. That's because most of the opponent's Pokemon are bug, flying, and poison types. And additionally, there are a few grass type Pokemon thrown in, And yeah, they really don't help either. So the next two Pokemon in this series will of course be Charmander and then Squirtle, and I'm expecting them to have a much faster time in the early game than Bulbasaur does, at least against random trainers. Because by the time I reach Brock's gym, Bulbasaur is ready to start crushing it. I think I should face the Light Years Junior trainer today just because he's going to be a free experience. In FireRed and Leaf Green, he actually has higher level Pokemon and he leads with a Geodude, which makes sense. For once, he doesn't just have ground type Pokemon in the rock type gym. I knock it out in one hit because I do 4 times damage. Next he sends in his Sandshrew. This one is level 11. In Pokemon Yellow it's level 9. But of course Bulbasaur finishes it off with no problems, and with that I have made it to Brock. Let's do this. He leads with Geodude. Now it's level 12, both of his Pokemon are the same levels that they are in Red and Blue in these games, but they have significantly better movesets because they have rock type moves. But Bulbasaur has nothing to worry about, it just knocks the Geodude out in one hit. Next is Onix. It does move first, hits Bind, but this move doesn't work the same way it works in Generation 1. Because of that, I'm able to move, hit the Onix with Vine Whip, I actually get a critical hit and knock it out in one hit, so yeah, that was a very easy first badge. With it comes a 10% boost to my attack stat. Yes, this is a 10% boost in Generation 3, not a 12.5% boost. And here I should mention something else about these playthroughs. I have decided to give Bulbasaur a hardy nature, which is a neutral nature, so none of my stats are raised or lowered. This is largely because from the comments on my Emerald videos, it has become very apparent to me that I'm not always picking the best natures. Like, it feels like my batting average is like maybe 10%. Normally I've been selecting just terrible natures for my Pokemon, and it becomes very clear by the end of the playthrough. So for this series, I'm just going to go for neutral natures on all of my Pokemon. I'd really appreciate it though if you left a comment and let me know which nature you think would be best for Bulbasaur. I'm thinking that probably a modest nature would be best to raise my special attack and lower my physical attack, but the reason I didn't just go for that in this playthrough is, like, Bulbasaur does have to use Tackle a decent amount in the early game, and I really didn't want these fights to be longer or more annoying than they already were. Case in point, this bug catcher here on Route 3, at least I managed to finally defeat his Metapod, and with that Bulbasaur's level 16, so here it's going to evolve into an Ivysaur. And now it's time for Mount Moon. So in Generation 1, the TM that's just inside the door is Water Gun, so water Pokemon tend to have a very easy time in the earliest portions of the game. After all, once they defeat Misty, they get access to Bubble Beam. But in Fire Red and Leaf Green, the TM here is actually Bullet Seed, which actually really makes sense. The developers are giving you an item that is very good against the next gym leader. Now you'll notice here that I'm backtracking, and that's because I want to go back to the Pewter City Mart, because here you can buy repels. Now in Generation 1 you cannot buy repels here, you have to wait until you get to Cerulean City, but it makes sense to stock up on these now because it's really going to help me save time in Mount Moon. After all, it's really annoying because there are so many Zubat there. Now in subsequent playthroughs you're going to notice that this is not yet muscle memory for me. I have filmed a lot of this series already. So yeah, prepare for me missing these repels repeatedly. Once I make it back to Mount Moon, I grab the rare candy, and then I decide to face this hiker. After all, his 3 Pokemon take 4 times damage from Vine Whip, so I easily finish them all off. So now another thing that I need to reconfigure my brain on for the remakes is the fact that Jesse and James don't exist. Instead, I have to beat this guy here. Luckily, he's not very hard. I think Jesse and James are actually a harder fight. That's saying a lot too, because they're not very good. With him out of the way, it's time to take on the Super Nerd, because I really need to earn myself the Dome Fossil. Grimer's a bit annoying because it takes 4 hits to knock out. Next is Coughing. It also takes 4 hits to knock out. And finally, it's time for Voltorb. I use Vine Whip, and I knock it out over 2 turns. So with him out of the way, I pick my Fossil, and now it's time to take on Misty. She leads with Staryu. It's faster than Ivysaur, it moves first, uses Harden. Just great. I hit it with Vine Whip, it takes it to red, then Misty uses a Super Potion. After that, I take it back down to red health. It hits me with Water Pulse, which does like no damage, and then I finish it off on the next turn. Okay, so it's time for her ace, Starmie. And in this case, we are going to see the power of the Bulbasaur-Line, which is the ability to use Sleep Powder. If you couldn't already tell from my videos, I love sleep tactics, and that's probably because as a kid, I chose Bulbasaur like the vast majority of times that I played the game, and I also liked to play with Butterfree. So yeah, after I put the Starmie to sleep, I'm able to knock it out with 3 uses of Vine Whip, and with that, I've earned myself the Cascade Badge. Now I fought Misty first because next is the rival on Nugget Bridge, and he leads with a Pidgeotto in this game. That's quite different than his Spearow from Yellow version. The problem here is this thing loves to use Sand Attack, After I hit it once with tackle, it wakes up and sand attacks me, and like, so frustrating. My next sleep powder misses, it sand attacks again. I decide, well, maybe I shouldn't put it to sleep. I miss a tackle, sand attacks me again, it sand attacks me again, and then finally it starts using Gust to do damage. And I'm feeling pretty hopeless here. It actually sand attacks again, so that's 5. And then I do manage to get some chip damage in, but it survives on red health and finishes Ivysaur off. So that's my first reset. And unfortunately for me, I did not save before the rival, so I have to face Misty again. Luckily for me, I just defeat her very quickly and make it back to the rival. Of course, this time I did save. I missed my first sleep powder. It sand attacks me right away. Come on. My tackle misses. My next tackle misses. Like, are you kidding me? And then my third one misses. So this thing is just going to wake up. I thought maybe I should preemptively go for sleep powder to put it back to sleep, but of course I'm moving first, so like it's already asleep. It's annoying that it wakes up, sand attacks again. Sleep powder misses. This fight is awful. I have a feeling that this is going to be one of my least favorite fights in any game. So yeah, I don't even get the Pidgeotto down to like half health. It just knocks me out. All right, let's try this again. Now I want to mention why this fight is actually harder for Ivysaur than it would have been in, say, Pokemon Red and Blue. And that's because in Generation 1, Gust is a normal type move, so it wouldn't be doing super effective damage here. But in this generation, it has been updated and is now a flying move, so it is doing super effective damage to me. In this third fight, I got so close to knocking the Pidgeotto out, like it survived with the least amount of health possible, and then it just quick attacks me and knocks me out. Okay, so let's do this again, maybe 4th time's the charm. But here I have a new strategy. So one of the problems is that I'm just not doing very much damage, and I'm also missing fairly consistently after I get hit with Sand Attack. So here's my new strategy. After putting it to sleep, I can use Leech Seed, and this way every turn I'm going to gain back some health and deal some damage. I get better sleep luck, and as a result of all these things coming together, I move on to his next Pokemon, which is Charmander with green health. I go for Tackle right away, it gets a critical hit doing half, Charmander hits me with Ember, and then I get another critical hit knocking it out. Alright, that's the luck I needed. Next, he sends in Abra. I don't know why this thing hasn't evolved yet because it is level 16. Maybe the rival also spams B too much. I always get asked the question, like, do you ever forget to cancel the evolution? No. It's more likely going to be the fact that I accidentally cancel the evolution in these videos. It's such a habit now. Next is Rattata. I actually missed here twice, which is really scary because it takes me to red health. But when I finally hit Vine Whip, it does a lot of damage and knocks it out. Ivysaur levels up to level 22, and here it gets a chance to learn Razor Leaf. This is a fantastic move. It has base 55 power, 95 accuracy, and it has an increased critical hit rate. So for now, I replace Vine Whip, and let's move on to the rest of Nugget Bridge. If you defeat this Hiker, and then fight this Junior Trainer, he'll move out of the way, and you can pick up this TM, which is Secret Power. In Generation 1, it's Seismic Toss, but Secret Power is actually a lot better because almost all Pokemon can learn it. And in this game, it's sort of the Body Slam replacement. Like, it doesn't have as much power, but on normal terrain, it does have a 30% chance to paralyze. And this is much better than Tackle, so let's replace that move now. I finish off the trainers here, and then I head into Bill's house, which teleports me, of course, to the SS Ant. Thank you, video editing. Here, I'm going to pick up the TM for Rest. It is in the same room. By the way, this guy is now a spinner, so you don't have to battle him, but I just battle him anyways, like I might as well. After that, I head to the healing room, which does exist in this generation. Yeah, it's this room here. You talk to this lady and she heals you. That's very nice. After that, I head to the kitchen. And this was a tip that Speedrunner0218 gave me. And he said if you search these trash cans, you'll actually get 3 held item berries, which can be very useful. So I picked these up here. It's the Pecha Berry, which isn't going to be very useful because I'm a poison type. Then the Cherry Berry, and finally the Chesto Berry. That'll be really nice to use if I want to use Rest at some point during this playthrough. And now it's time to face the rival again. I'm really hoping that my moveset upgrade is going to give me an easy victory here. Secret Power does more than half to the Pidgeotto. It paralyzes, but still it gets a Sand Attack through. At least now that I'm using a new normal type move, I have 100% accuracy, so it is less likely to miss. But Kadabra moves first, disables Secret Power, and then I can't use it. Like, So use Sleep Powder, put it to sleep, and then knock it out with 2 uses of Razor Leaf. Next is Charmeleon. Secret Power is still disabled, so I go for Sleep Powder. It misses, I get hit by Ember, and then I put it to sleep on the next turn. Now Secret Power is able to be used again, so I knock it out over 2 turns and move on to the Raticate. I just love this sprite. It's so good. because it doesn't have particularly good special defense, I go for Razor Leaf, it misses, I get hit by Hyper Fang, but then my next Razor Leaf knocks it out. So this rival fight was much easier. With him out of the way, let's take on Surge. He leads with Voltorb. I surprisingly outspeed it and knock it out with one hit from Razor Leaf, so that's nice. By the way, you're probably wondering if I'm going to add trainer team graphics to the right hand side of the screen for Generation 3, and yes, I have actually already developed this feature, so you're going to see it show up in maybe my 4th video of this series. By the way, which is going to be with the Pikachu line only, and yeah, that run was... well, I'll let you see when it comes out. So Surge's ace Pokemon is Raichu, of course. Razor Leaf doesn't do that much to it, but in this case, its best move that it can hit me with is Quick Attack and, like, Thunder Wave. So yeah, Raichu's really not doing that much, and I eventually just knock it out with a critical hit. So the 3rd badge was easy for me to get. Now, because they changed how the dig mechanics work, I have to actually walk back to Cerulean City, and that means I have to specifically stop by the bike store and make sure that I exchange my bike voucher here. Otherwise, I just won't have the bicycle when I get to Celadon City. Next is Picnicker Alicia, also known as the Rapping Lass. Because of how Rap was redesigned, I'm never going to get stuck against her in these games. Also for Ivysaur, Secret Power is just doing enough damage, so I make it through her with no problems. Now I want to point out some hidden items on this route. First is the Chesto Berry, which is right here, and just after this hiker there is a rare candy right here on the ground. Like, there's not even a little black spot indicating that there's a hidden item there, you just have to know. During Rock Tunnel, Ivysaur gets enough experience to level up to level 32 where it evolves into a Venusaur. This is one advantage that it has over Charizard and Blastoise, because it evolves at a lower level. And then of course at the end of the tunnel we have the self-destructing hiker himself, it is Dudley. Obviously Venusaur has no problems here, I sweep through his entire team, and with that I've made it to the Rocket Hideout. Now in these games, this area is not optional, so I'm going to have to complete it. I'm going to skip most of the footage here, but before I do that I want to point out one thing that I learned, which is over here there's a Nugget right here beside the machine. It's no longer down where the double-edged TM is. After making my way through the rest of the area, I faced Giovanni. By the way, this is why I skip it in Pokemon Yellow and Red and Blue, is because, like, this area is just not very interesting. There aren't any trainers here that really cause problems for most Pokemon, and Giovanni just, like, makes the game even more brutal for electric types. So if I can bypass them, I at least give those Pokemon a fighting chance in the results. Today, Venusaur has no problems against him, and after that, I fly to Lavender Town, and here I am going to pick up a very useful item. After all, Venusaur is around level 36, so the power of return is starting to stack up. And this TM is in the same place that Swift was in Generation 1. I teach it to Venusaur in the place of Secret Power, and now let's face the rival in Pokemon Tower. Once again, Venusaur has to go up against its arch enemy, the Pidgeotto. Okay, I hope that once again my moveset upgrade is going to allow me to knock it out very easily. Will return get the job done? The answer is, of course, no. Pidgeotto doesn't go for Sand Attack though, it just goes for Gust and I knock it out on the next turn. Executes next, I take it out over 2 turns, he sends in Kadabra, I knock it out with 1 use of return, and then return almost one-shots the Charmeleon. I finish it off, move on to the Gyarados, and here I go for Razor Leaf. Like, it has an increased critical hit chance, so I do think it's the better choice than return. Gyarados goes down, and this was by far the easiest rival battle yet. At the top of the tower, I unmask the Marowak with the Silph Scope, and then I defeat it very quickly with 1 use of Razor Leaf. So now let's head into Erica's gym, and in Generation 1, this is usually the first place where most Pokemon will do some extra training. But for a Grass Poison type, it's not really a good choice here. So I fight the mandatory trainers here. I think there are 2 in FireRed, which is 1 more than in Generation 1. Let me know if I can actually get through this with only fighting 1 trainer. Like, pretty sure that going through the other side there are still at least 2 trainers. Anyways, let's not delay any longer. It's time to face Erica. While it is going to take a little bit of time for me to knock her Pokemon out and I am paralyzed, it's not going to be very hard. So what I want you to watch is my moveset after this Victory Bell faints. What you'll notice is that it kind of like flashes out of existence for a moment and then flashes back into existence. This is perhaps the most annoying tech problem that I am having with Generation 3. It frustrates me so much. This happens very, very consistently between Pokemon being sent out into the battle and sometimes just randomly during the turn, which is what occurs here against the Tangela. I'm not entirely sure what's causing this behavior yet. It could be related to the dynamic memory allocation, or DMA, which is where the game just shuffles around where it's storing stuff in the RAM. This is an anti-cheat measure that they introduced in Generation 3, and it has been so annoying to work around in real time. Anyways, I'm gonna have to find a coding solution for this. but I am optimistic that I'll be able to get it done with a little bit more time. So with Erica out of the way, I head over to the game corner. Now I did actually come here first, but I didn't show the footage of it because I didn't have enough money yet, and I want to be able to buy 1,000 coins. And the reason for this is because I can use them to buy myself a miracle seed. It turns out in these games, being either a grass, fire, or water type is advantageous because you can get easy access to your type boosting item. By the way, almost all of the other type boosting items you have to find on wild Pokemon, which have a 5% chance to be a held item. The only exception to this that I could find was the Expert Belt, which is held by Pokemon on Black Belt's teams. So you can use Thief to obtain that item consistently. And that's actually quite nice because in Generation 1 fighting types are just trash. So it's great that in Generation 3 they have something that's like pretty nice for them in these solo playthroughs. On Cycling Road, if you hold B, it acts as the brake so your bike stops going down the hill. And in line horizontally with these signs are held items. So on the right hand side of Cycling Road there is a rare candy. I head into the Safari Zone next, and this item that I'm walking by that is in the middle of that lake in the grass is that Sunny Day, so I probably should have picked that up. Anyways, I actually have learned a lot about the game since I filmed this playthrough. Yeah, I'll have to go back and get that later if I need it. Next is Silph. On the floor with the guy with the mandatory Arbok, there is a PP up on this plant. I fight him, making quick work of his Arbok, pick up the card key, and then I go over to this room, and just like in Generation 1, there is a protein in here. And now I want to talk about probably the biggest change between Generation 1 and 2 going into Generation 3. And that's how they reimagined the DV system and turned it into the IV system, or individual values, and how they completely revamped the stat experience system and basically invented a new system in its place, which is effort values. So first let's talk about IVs. In the first two generations of Pokemon, DVs range from 0 to 15, which is like a fairly small range. It's because when storing these DVs, they were only using one nibble, which is half of a byte, and a single nibble's value can only range from 0 to 15. Whereas in Generation 3, I think what they wanted to do is create a little bit more variety between all Pokemon. So now IVs range from a value of 0 to 31. By the way, this is really annoying from a programming perspective because it's using a pentad of bits. It's been fairly awful to track the IVs down, and I can't yet modify them with GameHook, so I'm having to like save my game, take the save file, put it into the program called PKHex, and then set all my IVs to the correct value. We're going to figure it out eventually, but it's taking a little while. So now let's talk about the changes to stat experience. In Generation 1 and 2, whenever you defeat a Pokemon, its base stats are added to all of your stat experience values. So like you have an HP stat experience, an attack stat experience, that sort of thing. So if you defeat a Pokemon like Chansey, you gain a lot of stat experience in your HP stat, but very little in your attack and defense stat. Yes, Chansey has 5 attack and 5 base defense. Stat experience maxes out when it hits a value of 65,535, and you can max out every single one of your stats. Whereas in the new EV system, this is not possible anymore. Pokemon are limited to 510 effort points in total, and each stat can only have a total of 555 effort points. By the way, you only ever want to have 552 because the effect that these points have on your stats is you divide the effort points by 4, and that is the number of stat points that they increase that stat by. So yeah, having the extra 3 points will not actually give you one more stat because, again, almost everything rounds down in these games. So this new system is like a bit trickier because in Generation 1, whenever you pick up a vitamin, you just want to use it right away on your Pokemon, regardless of if that Pokemon is like a physical attacker or a special attacker. Like, it's pretty much always good to just use a vitamin. There are only 2 reasons to not use a vitamin. 1, you want to sell it, and number 2, you don't want to use the protein to increase your attack stat so you take less damage from self-inflicted confusion. In Generation 3 though, this is all different. It is a zero-sum game. If I use a Carbos, then I am taking away available space that could be invested, say, into my special attack or my HP. I think it is going to become exceedingly apparent to you in these playthroughs that I have no idea how to play with this system yet. It is going to take a while to really feel this out. So if you have any tips for me regarding this new system, please do let me know in the comments. It's going to be very helpful. So now with that long exposition out of the way, let's take on the rival in Silph. Obviously, he leads with Pidgeot. I decided to go for growth here just because I was like, well, it might be nice to have a little bit more special attack. You will note that my special attack stat has a green background. I did not notice that until I had filmed the first 3 videos in this series, so I'm sorry. The label is correct, but the color is wrong, so yeah, the top stat there is my special attack stat. Anyways, the Pidgeotto wakes up, it takes me down to yellow health, which is so annoying. Executes next, put it to sleep, set up growth one more time, it wakes up, paralyzes me, and then knocks me out, so that was not a good fight. Let's try again. This time, I miss Sleep Powder on the first turn, get hit by Wing Attack, which is really annoying, and then I put the Pidgeotto back to sleep and knock it out over 3 turns. It is really annoying that I am not 2-hitting this thing. Next is Execute, I put it to sleep, knock it out with 3 returns. Like, come on, can this not just be a 1-hit? Next is Alakazam. I really don't think I'm going to 1-hit it with how well this fight has been going so far, so I put it to sleep, use Return, it doesn't 1-hit, then I knock it out on the next turn. Alright. Moment of truth, because the rival has a Charizard. I put it to sleep, use Return, and it does like what looks like a third. I get one more attack in, then Charizard wakes up, hits Flamethrower, and knocks Venusaur out with a critical hit. I figured that I could get back to the Charizard, and I do in the next fight, but then Sleep Powder misses and it knocks me out with Flamethrower, so I think I should do something else instead. Let's go battle Koga. In the remakes, his team is most similar to what it was in Red and Blue. I go for Return against the Coughing, it doesn't knock it out, it goes for Self-Destruct and does almost halved Venusaur. Alright, that is not a good start to this fight. Muck's next. I do less than half, it sets up Minimize, I go for another return, it survives, uses Sludge, taking me under half health, and then Koga heals it. After just barely not knocking out the Muck again, it hits another Sludge, taking Venusaur down to 19 hit points, and here I realized that I should really have put this thing to sleep just so that it didn't hit me so many times. I knock it out, move on to the next Coughing, and here I'm going to go for Sleep Powder because it really can't have it using Self-Destruct after it survives. Koga uses a full heal. Okay, it's good to know that he has that, but because I'm outspeeding, I hit the Coughing twice with Return and take it down. All that remains is Wheezing. I go for Sleep Powder because I really can't take any damage. Unfortunately, I miss. It uses Sludge and Venusaur faints. I think it's time to do some training. Both of these battles are not going particularly well. One really good place to do that is going to be the Fighting Dojo because there are so many trainers that are clustered close together, so I don't waste much time with walking. I head back to Koga at level 45, which is over a damage rounding threshold. I am hoping this lets me take the Muck out with 2 turns. I put it to sleep, go for Return, and it does go down to 2 hits. Next is Coughing, and it hits smoke screens, lowering Venusaur's accuracy, so I was like, okay, I should just really attack and knock it out. I get a lucky critical hit, and I take it out even after Koga heals. And then against Wheezing, I put it to sleep, not once, but twice, even though I was hit with the smoke screens. But still it isn't enough because it wakes up and knocks Venusaur out. However, I think that fight was quite unlucky because in the next battle I make it back to Wheezing, but I have green health. Because Sludge is only neutral against me, I can just forego Sleep Powder entirely, attack 3 times with Return, and knock Koga's ace out. So I've earned myself the 5th badge, and now as we go up against the rival again, I really want to draw your attention to the fact that Koga's badge boosted my defense stat. Yes, this is how it's supposed to work in Generation 1, but there's a glitch which means Koga's badge boosts your speed stat, so that really makes yellow so much harder. Against the rival, I make it back to the Charizard with full health, and now at level 45, I roll better damage and knock it out with only 2 hits, so that is much better in terms of consistency. Gyarados is last, I use Return 3 times. After all, this move has gained a lot of power because my Venusaur is just loving me much more now. I knock it out with 3 hits, and with that, I have earned myself the right to claim Lapras. Of course, I teach it some HM moves and get a chance to look at this awesome sprite. Okay, Giovanni's next, and he's really not a challenge in this battle. Venusaur defeats him so easily. And with that, I've cleared the way to take on Sabrina. She has the same Pokemon that she has in Red and Blue, which I think in this case actually makes the fight easier. Her yellow team would have been harder in these games because the AI is better, and her Pokemon are higher levels in yellow. In this case, she only has a level 43 Alakazam, and despite Venusaur not being particularly fast, it moves first, hits Return, and knocks it out in 1 hit. Last is Venomoth, and of course this Fire Psychic type is like very scary for Venusaur to go up against. However, Fire Psychic doesn't resist normal, so I take it all the way down to red health in 1 hit. It confuses Venusaur. Sabrina uses a Hyper Potion. Obviously this Pokemon is her ace. Just makes sense, it's so powerful. Venusaur hits itself, Venomoth hits a Psybeam, it does so much damage, then hits another one, getting a critical hit, and now Venusaur is at red health. I actually think I'm gonna lose. Luckily, I snap out of confusion, hit Return, it takes Venomoth down to red health, it uses Psybeam, And Venusaur survives on 6 hit points. But Sabrina uses a hyper potion. I hit return, taking it back to red health, outspeed on the last turn, and knock it out. So I just barely made it through that fight. Next, in Pokemon Mansion, there's a hidden rare candy right over here. You do have to face one optional trainer to get it, but I do think that that's worth it. So now I throw myself into the abyss because I'm gonna have to face Blaine next. In this case for Venusaur, I'm not particularly worried against him because his team is much lower leveled than it would be in Pokemon Yellow, and Venusaur's almost level 50. Okay, the Growlithe actually did a decent amount of damage to me. That's not very good. I should probably start using Sleep Powder here to get through the next few Pokemon without taking any damage. Unfortunately, Blaine does have a full heal, so he wakes the Rapidash up, and I'm just barely not doing enough damage to knock it out in 2 hits. So it lands a Fire Blast, gets a critical hit, and Venusaur goes down. Alright, so I haven't used any rare candies, and to this point I've accumulated 9. You might ask why not teach Venusaur Earthquake, because that would be super effective against Blaine, but in the remakes, the Earthquake TM is actually given to you by Giovanni, because there's no longer a Fissure TM. So it would be really nice if Venusaur could use Earthquake here, but it can't. So let's go up over 2 damage rounding thresholds to level 53. Here, Venusaur has the chance to learn Synthesis. I wasn't sure if I should put this in the place of Growth. After all, stat boosting moves are just not quite as good as they were in Generation 1. But I remember back to my times with Ludicolo where I replaced that move too early on before I got to the league, so I'm going to keep Growth for now. Hopefully the extra levels are going to be enough for Blaine. One thing that's really annoying against him is that his Growlithe that leads has Intimidate, so it actually lowers my physical attack before I even start the battle. This means that Growlithe just barely survives and gets to use Fire Blast once. I knock it out on the next turn with a critical hit, then I move on to the Ponyta, and here I really should be using Sleep Tactics, but unfortunately it wakes up and hits me. So Venusaur has very little health left for the rest of the battle. Luckily, I put the Rapidash to sleep and then get a critical hit knocking it out, and that means I make it to the Arcanine. But it once again has Intimidate, so my attack stat is only 64 now. I put it to sleep, and return looks like it's doing a 5th, but after hitting on the 2nd and 3rd turn, it looks like I just might make it. But then Arcanine wakes up, uses Fire Blast, and it misses. So because of that, Venusaur moves first, hits return, and Arcanine goes down. I've defeated Blaine. With his badge, I get a boost to my special attack and my special defense, and then I quickly make work of the mandatory trainers in Giovanni's gym. I fight one optional trainer to take Venusaur up to level 54, and now I'm ready to take on the ground-type villain. So, I don't know what to say about this fight, but Giovanni is probably one of the most improved trainers between Red and Blue and Yellow, and then he has been, completely ruined in these games. I have no idea what they were thinking. They gave him a second Rhyhorn. Why doesn't he have a Rhydon? I'm so confused. Anyways, Venusaur has no problems with this fight. Completely easy. After this, I decided to teach some TMs, so I put Earthquake in the place of Growth. I'm going to talk about this later, but yeah, for now I did it. And then I also replaced Razor Leaf with Giga Drain. After all, it has slightly higher base power, and it does allow me to heal. Next, I face the rival on Route 22. He leads with Pidgeot. Come on, please return. At least give me a 1-hit on this thing for once in the... Okay, no, that's nowhere near a 1-hit. I don't even think I'm going to get a 2-hit. But I do roll better damage on the next turn, and I take it out. Alakazam's next. I move first, hit return, and it just barely doesn't knock it out. Psychic hits Venusaur, taking me down to low yellow health, and then he sends in Charizard. Okay, I think I need a miracle. I put it to sleep, hit return. Okay, looks like it's going to be a 3-hit. But Charizard wakes up, hits Wing Attack, and Venusaur faints. This fight is pretty simple theoretically. What I need is Sleep Powder to just work against the Pidgeotto, and then against the Alakazam that follows, and then against the Charizard that follows that. And if I can make it through these 3 Pokemon, the Rhyhorn is very easy to clean up with Giga Drain. After that, I can just put the Execute to sleep and knock it out over 2 turns. Finally, he has a Gyarados, and I can use Giga Drain on it for decent damage. So yeah, I was able to make it through on my 2nd attempt. And with that, I'm off to the league. Up first is Lorelei, and she's sort of an ice trainer and sort of a water trainer. So I expect that Venusaur isn't going to have too many problems against her. I can knock the Dugong out in 2 hits. Next, she sends in Slowbro. I was actually surprised how much damage Giga Drain does to it. I finish it off with Return, and then she sends in Lapras. Unfortunately here, my Sleep Powder misses, and then it confuses me. I damage myself. It hits Ice Beam. I damage myself again, and then it knocks Venusaur out on the next turn. Okay, so that was bad luck. Let's try again. Now, one addition to her moveset in this game is that the Slowbro actually has an ice type move in the form of Ice Beam. That makes this thing like really good. It takes Venusaur down under half health before I finish it off with a Giga Drain. So I heal back to half and move on to her ace, Lapras. I put it to sleep. Giga Drain does more than half, healing me almost to full. It eats a Citrus Berry, healing a bit of health, but then my next Giga Drain just takes it out. Next is Jinx. I decided to put it to sleep and then I use Return, so it's good I put it to sleep because I have to take it out over 2 turns. And that means I've probably made it through this fight. All that remains is Cloyster, doesn't have particularly good special defense, so take it out with 1 Giga Drain. And with that, I am moving on to Bruno. Yes, he is a member of the Elite Four in this generation, and I do need to respect him because after I knock the Hitmonchan out, Hitmonlee comes out, hits a Mega Kick, which gets a crit and does so much damage to Venusaur. It is really lucky for me that Onix follows, because I can just one-hit this thing with Giga Drain and heal a bunch of health before the Machamp comes out. On its first turn in battle, it goes for Scary Face. I guess that's a move you can use against me. Not sure why you'd want to, because then it just uses Cross Chop, and this move is doing very little damage, and I finish Machamp off with 2 more Giga Drains. So, I've made it to Agatha. Out of all the Elite Four members, I think she is going to be the most difficult for Venusaur, so it is time to use a bunch more rare candies and level up to level 65. And here I get the chance through level up to learn Solar Beam. And I want to talk about this, because remember when I added Earthquake to my moveset before? I was thinking that it was going to be good against Agatha. But then once I got to her, I realized, like, her ghosts have Levitate. So Earthquake is not very good against her. And then once I defeat her, I have to face Lance, who is like a flying type leader. So I think I should delete Earthquake without ever having really used it and teach Solar Beam in its place. After all, I only can hit the ghosts with grass type moves. So are you ready for the pain that is going to be Agatha? Let's do this. Gengar's first. And of course I have to put this thing to sleep because I'm going to need to knock it out with Solar Beam. Now you might wonder, would it be better to have Sunny Day here? And of course it would. But remember when I missed it in the Safari Zone? Yeah, I didn't think to go back to get it because again I was thinking Earthquake's going to be fine for Agatha. So I've saved during the league and I don't want to black out. Let's just see if I can do this with Solar Beam. The Gengar does wake up, take me down to half health. I put it back to sleep and then knock it out with the second Solar Beam. Next is Golbat. I put it to sleep and then Return makes the most sense here. I take it out with 2 hits and move on to the Haunter. Okay, Sleep Powder, please work. It does. I go for Solar Beam. Here I predicted that she was going to use a full restore, so I went for Giga Drain to do some damage to Haunter. And I knew that then it wouldn't go back down to healing range and cause her to use maybe another full restore. I put it back to sleep, finish it off with 2 more Giga Drains, saving my Solar Beams for the final Gengar. It goes to sleep, I use Solar Beam, it does half, Gengar wakes up, misses a Hypnosis, eats a Citrus Berry, and I clicked a little bit too fast here, using Solar Beam again, which gives Gengar the time to hit a critical hit Sludge Bomb. Because of the Citrus Berry, my Solar Beam doesn't knock it out. Luckily, I wake up from sleep because I have a Chesto Berry, and then after Agatha heals with a full restore, I put the Gengar back to sleep. Solar Beam once again does half, and then I hit one more time with it, knocking her last ghost out. So all that's left is Arbok. Obviously, same strategy as before, just put this thing to sleep, spam Return, but unfortunately after my first use of Return, it wakes up, and I have no more power points for Sleep Powder. Okay, Sludge Bomb did a lot of damage, I don't have much health left over, so I don't really know what to do because I also can't use Giga Drain to even heal a little bit. I guess I just have to roll for Return damage here. Luckily Venusaur is moving first, so I do some damage. Arbok hits Sludge Bomb and it takes me all the way down to 6 hit points. My last Return connects and Arbok faints. So I defeated Agatha on my first attempt. And with that, I have made it to the second last trainer in the game. It's time to face Lance. Now here, there is a serious issue, which is his Gyarados, because it has Intimidate. And yeah, Solar Beam and Giga Drain are not very good against his flying type Pokemon. I can do enough damage to the Gyarados to knock it out, but the real problem is the Dragonite that comes out next. It has a double resistance to grass type moves, so I'm gonna need to use Return here. And this move is doing what looks like a 5th. So I'm going to have to get really lucky with sleep. Making matters even worse is the fact that when Dragonite wakes up, its wing attack does so much damage to Venusaur, like basically half. On the first battle, I end up fainting. For some reason, Lance chooses to send Aerodactyl out second in the next battle, which is like, okay, I guess that's annoying because it outspeeds, does damage. I miss Sleep Powder, and yeah, it just knocks me out on the next turn with Wing Attack. In the next battle, I get lucky against the Aerodactyl, put it to sleep, and knock it out with 2 uses of Giga Drain. Time for Dragonite, but I don't have luck here, miss 2 Sleep Powders, and faint as a result. However, in the next battle, I put the Dragonite to sleep, and I'm able to get 3 returns in before it wakes up, and here it goes for Hyper Beam, and misses, eats a Citrus Berry, and I put it back to sleep. So that's the perfect luck that I needed. I hit 3 more returns and it goes down. So for the first time, I have made it past the Gyarados, the Aerodactyl, and the Dragonite. That means that Lance only has 2 Dragonairs left over. I go for Sleep Powder against the first one. It has Shed Skin, so it wakes up right away. I miss my next Sleep Powder, and then I get hit by Outrage. Honestly, that didn't do very much, so I think I can just use Return here and knock the Dragonair out with 3 hits. He sends in his last one, I continue just attacking, and despite paralysis, I take it out with 3 hits. So, Venusaur has made it through all of the game, except for the champion. Let's do this. Okay, it's time for the last showdown against the Pidgeot. Please Sleep Powder work, because I know that Return is not going to do it. It's just not been doing it throughout this entire playthrough. Sleep Powder works, I use Return, it doesn't even do half. The Pidgeot wakes up, hits Aerial Ace, doing about a third to me. Put it back to sleep, use Return again, uses a full restore, fine. I miss my next Sleep Powder, get hit by Sand Attack. I miss again, get hit by another Sand Attack. Alright, so this fight's definitely over. I do manage to take the Pidgeot out, but my hope is crushed. Alakazam's next, I go for Sleep Powder, of course it misses. Alakazam sets up Reflect, which is really annoying. My next Sleep Powder misses, I get hit by Psychic, which takes me down to 10 hit points. Finally, I do actually manage to put it to sleep, and then 2 Giga Drains in a row hit, allowing Venusaur to heal up a little bit, but Charizard is next, so yeah, I'm probably going to lose here. But miraculously, Sleep Powder works, and I hit the Charizard enough times to knock it out. Okay, I actually might win on my first attempt. Exeggutor's next. It's not particularly scary. It sets up Light Screen first turn, and I was like, well, I should probably not try and hit Sleep Powder. It's just gonna miss because of the Sand Attacks. Let's go for Return. But then Exeggutor's like, ha ha ha, I have Sleep Powder now, which is a big upgrade for it over Hypnosis from Generation 1. 15% more accuracy is not good when the opponent is trying to put you to sleep. So yeah, now Venusaur is snoozing, and as a result, the coconut pineapple tree thing knocks me out. I'm sad about that because in the next fight, my luck against the Pidgeot is not as good. It takes me to half health. And then on the Alakazam, I misclick on Solar Beam and it one-shots me. Just great. So I'll play the footage of the next fight. I am going to lose here, by the way. I just want to say that when the moves are not stacked, in a list, when they're in this grid shape, it's actually much easier to make mistakes because you have to press up and down and side to side. And by the way, in Generation 3, if you press up when your cursor is on Giga Drain, it does not go down to Solar Beam, it just doesn't move, which for me is really a frustrating mechanic, and it has been leading to a lot of move mistakes just because I don't find this way of selecting moves quite as intuitive. Okay, so let's do this fight again. Pidgeot's first, it hits Aerial Ace, gets a critical hit, and does more than half to me. My next Sleep Powder puts it to sleep, and then I decided to use Giga Drain. I know this is not very good, but I wanted to heal a little bit. I use Return after that, finish it off, and move on to the Alakazam. Luckily, it goes to sleep, and here Giga Drain does make sense. It's going to survive Return anyways, so I heal back almost to full, and then Charizard comes out. I put it to sleep, Return hits 3 times, and I knock it out. So I've made it back to the Exeggutor, and I know here that it is a battle of sleep tactics. I need to put it to sleep first. I do. I start using Return. This thing is actually decently bulky, so it survives a few hits. Wakes up, I have to put it back to sleep, but then I manage to knock it out. Rhydon's next. I one-shot with Giga Drain, and the only Pokemon he has left over is Gyarados. Obviously, this flying type Pokemon does not have any flying type moves. I guess it's the spirit of Generation 1 there. So I'm able to just spam Giga Drain and finish it off. So I've done it. I beat the game with only a Venusaur. This was honestly a very nostalgic run for me because as a kid, whenever I played Fire Red and Leaf Green, this is how I played the game. I'd always choose Venusaur and I'd always just solo the game with it. So what time does it get when my results display at the end of the game? Well, Venusaur clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 26 minutes, and 8 seconds, with 17 resets, and it finished the game at level 67. This all took a game time of 4 hours and 48 minutes. So I do think that it's fair to rank the Butterfree playthrough that I did on December 25th with this run. After all, I started with a Caterpie in that run. So I will be putting these results in a tier list throughout this series, but I'm going to wait until the next video to do that. After all, I only have 2 results right now, and Venusaur was very clearly faster than Butterfree. Up next in the series is going to be a playthrough with the Charmander line, so stay tuned for that sometime in the next week. Once again, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it. I know a lot of you have been here for a really long time, like some of you 2 years now. So thank you so much. You are all incredible. I'll see you in my next video.